In a crowded neighborhood on the outskirts of Manila, where houses clung to each other like old friends leaning for support, lived a 17-year-old boy named Marco Villanueva. To most people, Marco was just another quiet kid, thin from skipping meals, who worked part-time at a small mechanic shop. But inside his heart lived a dream so loud, so stubborn, so impossible, he wanted to sing on a world stage. Ever since he was little, music had been Marco's escape. His father once sang at festivals, his voice warm like morning sunshine, but after an accident took his life, their home fell silent. His mother worked nights at a bakery, exhausted, often returning home too tired even to speak. Marco, the eldest, carried responsibilities far heavier than his age allowed, but he still sang to in the alley behind their home. Under a flickering street lamp, he'd practice Elvis Presley songs. Can't Help Falling in Love was his favorite. He learned every note by ear, mimicking the warmth, the soul, the richness. It soothed him when hunger gnawed at him. It comforted him when loneliness felt like a shadow sitting on his shoulder. It gave him a reason to hope. One humid evening, while he practiced, a group of neighborhood kids listened quietly from the corner. When he finished, an old tricycle driver clapped and said, "Boy, you sound like Elvis if he grew up here in Manila." Marco just smiled shyly. Compliments felt like borrowed clothes, nice, but not his. But fate was listening. One day, his mechanic shop boss showed him something on his old cracked phone: America's Got Talent auditions, open to worldwide submissions. Marco laughed. "Kuya, I don't even have money for breakfast. How will I go to America?" But his boss wasn't joking. "You send a video. Maybe they see you. Who knows?" Hope flickered, small, trembling, but alive. That night, Marco recorded himself singing Elvis under the street lamp. The audio wasn't perfect, a dog barked halfway, a jeepney rattled by. But Marco sang with his whole soul. He submitted it, and then, life went on. Weeks passed. Bills piled up. His mother's health worsened. Marco worked extra shifts. His dream shrank back into its cage, like it always did, until, one afternoon, while wiping grease from his hands, his phone buzzed with an email: "We are excited to invite you to perform live at America's Got Talent." Marco froze, his chest tightened. His boss read it out loud for him, just to be sure. Then came the cheering, everyone in the shop shouting, hugging him, lifting him like he had already won the whole show. But a bite of reality hit him hard. He had no passport, no ticket, no savings. So the next morning, he found an envelope taped to the mechanic shop's entrance. Inside were bills, donations from neighbors, co-workers, even strangers who heard his story. They didn't have much, but each gave what they could. Some gave coins. Some gave notes. One widow gave her late husband's guitar pick for luck. With their help, and after a whirlwind of paperwork miracles, Marco boarded his first ever airplane. He stared out the window, clutching that guitar pick, whispering to himself, "Dad, this is for you." The AUDITON. Stepping into the AGT backstage felt like being inside a dream painted with lights. Everything was huge: ceiling, cameras, crowds. Marco's hands shook so badly he almost dropped his mic. He kept hearing his mother's voice in his head: "Anik, no matter what happens, sing with kindness. Sing with heart." When it was his turn, the stage swallowed him in brightness. The audience was a sea of faces he couldn't recognize. And at the center sat Simon Cowell, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Hello," Simon said. "Who are you?" I'm Marco Villanueva, from the Philippines," he stuttered. "What will you be singing?" "An Elvis classic, if that's okay." Simon raised an eyebrow. "Elvis is difficult." "You sure?" Marco swallowed. "I'll try my best, pa." The music started, soft, slow, fragile, but when Marco opened his mouth, the room changed. The first note was warm like honey, rich like an old vinyl record, and carried the unmistakable spirit of Elvis Presley, but uniquely his, shaped by hardship and heart. People leaned forward, judges blinked, surprised. Even Simon's eyebrows lifted, not slightly, but fully, like he had stepped into a memory he didn't expect. As Marco reached the chorus, something inside him broke open. You could hear it: pain, love, longing, hope, all woven into a voice far too soulful for 17. Phones came out. Audience members stood up. Terry Crews, watching from backstage, mouthed, "Wow." Marco wasn't just singing. He was pouring years of hunger, loss, alleyway concerts, and whispered prayers into every syllable. When he hit the final note, a trembling sustained tone that felt like a goodbye to the boy he used to be, the entire theater exploded into a standing ovation. Marco couldn't breathe. He looked at the crowd, at the judges, at Simon, but Simon wasn't clapping. He was staring, eyes glossy, jaw clenched, like he had no words big enough for this moment. Finally, he leaned forward and said, "Marco, I did not expect that. You didn't just sing Elvis. You honored him. You gave him a new voice. And I'll say this," he paused, the audience leaned in, "that is the single best Elvis rendition ever performed on this stage." The theater roared. Sophia wiped a tear. Howie shook his head in disbelief. Heidi clapped with both hands above her head, and then as Simon pressed the golden buzzer, a snowstorm of gold rained down over Marco. He covered his mouth, shaking, crying openly as the audience screamed his name. Terry Crews ran onto the stage, lifting him into a hug. "You did it, young king. You did it." Backstage, Marco called his mother. She answered half asleep, "Ma, I got the golden buzzer." She didn't speak, then she cried, the quiet kind mothers cry when prayers come true, and Marco cried with her, surrounded by strangers, lights, cameras, and the golden confetti sticking to his hair. The clip of his audition became one of the most watched videos in AGT history. Millions shared it. Celebrities reposted it. Elvis fans worldwide praised it, but Marco stayed the same boy who practiced under a street lamp, and when a reporter asked him why he didn't change, he said softly, "I already have everything I ever wanted. The world listened, and my father would be proud." If you felt Marco's journey in your heart, if his courage inspired you, if his voice touched your soul,